Hey guys, if you're looking for help with your Amazon business in terms of troubleshooting or strategy, visit sellersessions.com/consultancy or drop me a message to danny@sellersessions.com. Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions. Again, I bring back Chris Thomas. Hey Chris, how you doing?
Great to be. I'm going very well, thanks, Danny. Great to be back. Thanks for inviting me back to talk about Amazon Australia. Definitely very excited, given the caliber of some of the guests that you have on your show. I'm quite thrilled and honoured to be here to speak to you today.
Do you want to give obviously it's been a while since you've been back on the show. Do you want to give the audience a little bit of background on yourself?
Sure. So I've been selling on Amazon since, well, I've actually been involved with e-commerce since about 2001. I invented a product. I think if anybody wants to go back to listen to the session where we talked about how I created that product and kickstarted that product and raised some money on Kickstarter and promptly launched on Amazon, lost, what was it, $45,000 in 45 minutes on a failed promotional giveaway. You know, I've been around the block and back, and now I have a podcast called the Australian Seller Podcast, and it's mainly obviously focused at Australians, although quite a lot of international sellers tend to tune in, and it's been a lot of fun. So
Cool.
yeah.
And so today we're gonna get the lowdown. I know we haven't covered Australia yet, and I'll go over my reasonings with you later into the show. Sure. But I thought we might as well go in depth with this as your boots on the ground. You know what's going on. You've got clients who are on the platform over there. You understand the politics and the stuff on the ground. So I thought you'd be the ideal candidate to come in and chew the fat with. So let's kick off. I mean, how long it's been? About a year and some change has been up and running. So why did Amazon set up shop over there?
Well, the main reason was that Australians were actually spending close to $1 billion on Amazon.com and other Amazon marketplaces globally anyway. Prior to them, I mean, they had a presence here in Australia where they were basically only selling Kindle books. And, the Australian economy has been very strong for the last 27 years. We haven't had a recession. We breezed our way through the GFC. We dig a lot of shit out of the ground. The Chinese wanted to buy a lot of the iron ore and other resources. So we've had a very resource and agricultural based economy that we've luckily been able to just continually record economic growth. And so the retail market, by extension from that, is pretty strong. Yeah, and online retail as well, e-commerce retail has been growing at around about 18% per year, and that's currently sitting at around about 18, maybe $18.5 billion US per year and growing by a lot. Yeah. So that's not that's a drop in the bucket compared to say other marketplaces, but I think that was the main reason why Amazon wanted to get some boots on the ground and actually open up some FBA warehouses and really get going. Yeah.
I find what's the most interesting, we're going back in the day, late 90s, early 2000, when I used to be in the music industry. I used to tour and DJ and stuff. I've done Australia a couple of times. The one thing, apart from the extensive long flights that kill you, the one thing that stood out for me is how much is spread out. So give you an example. If I was playing in Perth or Ambar or places like that, I would have to take a 5-hour or so flight, I think it was from memory, to Sydney. So in terms of logistics, Western Australia is the biggest isolated patch in the world or something. I can't remember the correct terminology.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
How does Amazon make that work? When they don't have like Prime members out in the bush, do they? So
well, actually, they do. This is an interesting one. I sold a product a couple of weeks ago on Amazon Australia, which was just a set of headphones, for example, and they were delivered all the way up to Broome in 2 days. Now, Broome is at literally diametrically opposed ends of the country, probably about almost 5,000 kilometres away from the warehouse that it was shipped from. Yeah. So somehow, right up in the remote northwest of the country. So and what I think I'm sort of noticing from some of the orders that I'm getting that actually Prime membership has quite good penetration into the regional areas of Australia.
Wow.
So yeah, it is pretty amazing. But you're right about Perth and Western Australia. And it is going to Perth, which is the capital city of Western Australia, is literally, for Australians, it's like going to another country, but we get to use the same money. It's pretty amazing. In fact, it's further away to Perth than it is to, say, travel to New Zealand and go to Auckland. So, you know, it's
and I think there's a 1 hour time difference as well, isn't there, between Perth? Right?
Yeah, that's it's actually around about 1.5 to 2. It depends on daylight savings and other, times of the year.
But that gives you an idea of like the task to be undertaken and like how smart Amazon are logistically. Because my first thing is, how does it make it work from when, from FBA centres that are placed in Perth to the ones that are in Sydney, Melbourne, Noosa, around their areas?
Well, this is the interesting thing is that at the moment, Amazon only has 2 FBA warehouses. They started with one here in Melbourne, where I live, in the south of Australia, Victoria. Yeah. And they early this year or mid this year, they opened another one in Sydney, which is a lot bigger than the one that they opened here in Melbourne. So they are they're not disclosing when they're going to be opening the next one or where it's going to open up, but their focus is clearly on the East Coast at the moment, but they still seem to be able to deliver across to the West Coast pretty quickly within the 2 days promised. Yeah. So it's pretty amazing.
Good. So just to back up a little bit, when did they start? It was last year at some point, wasn't it? When was it?
Yeah, that's right. So they announced in around about July of 2017, so about 18 months ago, and then early December of last year, 2017, that's when they actually opened up the doors here and opened up. And they actually, announced a few days after they'd launched that it had been the most successful Amazon country launch in history for Amazon. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it seems underwhelming. I seem to, maybe because it's where I sit in the lens, I see that there's more pumped into trying to get you going into the EU or Japan than I've seen with, say, Australia or other territories that have opened up, like India and places like that. You don't hear as much as fanfare, but that may be because of the distance away. So, boots on the ground. Why were consumers were they excited about Amazon coming to Australia?
Oh, tremendously. I mean, as I said before, we had $1 billion worth of sales from Australians internationally on other marketplaces. So Australians were expecting the same level of choice and pricing and delivery. And there was a lot of pent up excitement and demand. And that's probably why on the actual launch day and a few days afterwards, it took off with a bit of a bang. But that was pretty short lived. Yeah.
Which we'll get into in a bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how does that affect the other businesses in Australia? Like I take it you still got, I haven't been in 15, 16 years. You still got your mum and pop stores and over there, haven't you? Your regular businesses. Yeah. What kind of impact has that had on them? And are they turning their nose up at the arrival of Amazon or embracing by moving online themselves by selling bricks and mortar and they're setting up their own stores?
Well, that's a really good question, Danny. I think it's there was absolute dread, I think, amongst, I know, particularly what was reported in the news and the quotes that were coming from some of Australia's largest CEOs, for example, of, Wesfarmers, which is one of the biggest companies here, which is, primarily retail, who are saying that Amazon was going to come in and eat our breakfast, lunch and dinners and, we need to adjust. And so there was a lot of fear because a lot of Australian companies had actually seen and read firsthand, the demise of, say, Toys R Us, for example, and the demise of retail, traditional bricks and mortar. Did I say water? Bricks and mortar retailers in the US, and really because of Amazon's presence. So there was a lot of fear from business and a lot of excitement from consumers, and it was a really interesting time.
Cool. So I know you said the launch was a bit of a success, but it kind of
initially,
it was a bit of a feast and famine going on. It was like a boom and bust cycle, really, wasn't it? It's like it started off well, but how did it follow up after that? Did they have logistics in place, or did they have problems?
Well, they basically launched pretty half baked. Look, personally, I think some of it too was to do with the fact. I know this is going to sound a bit weird, but Google had launched its its home assistant called Google Home, which you probably have one, and I actually think that because of the growth in voice search, Amazon really wanted to get a foothold for Amazon Alexa, and I think that was one of the reasons why it opened. But having said that, Amazon basically only opened with about 7 million products, and they had an invite only of 500 third-party sellers that were invited onto the platform. Yeah. So what that meant was that we only had around about 7 million products. Now, that might sound like a lot of products, but compared to, say, Europe or America, where there's upwards of 550 million or 600 million products in total. It was pretty scant offering to begin with. There was no Prime, there was no FBA. Everything was fulfilled by merchant. Amazon was obviously fulfilling from its single warehouse here in Melbourne, sort of like a pseudo Prime, but there was no Prime badge on the website, for example. So, it spiraled downhill pretty quickly. And the other big reason was because shortly afterwards, the marketplace was opened up and people could actually start to apply to sell on Amazon here in Australia. And the international arbitrageurs moved in. I'd probably dub them the international Amazon arbitrageurs. So, you've seen this on other marketplaces. We've seen it on Canada, we see it on Japan, but these guys basically duplicate listings from the United States or Europe into these new marketplaces, jack the prices up by 10 times, and hope for the best that someone's going to be silly enough to pay, 300 Australian dollars for a product that they could buy on Amazon for maybe 35, Yeah. Australians aren't stupid. We'd already been shopping on Amazon anyway. So, there was a massive backlash. Like, this is gouging. A lot of Australians are very unsophisticated about Amazon. They didn't understand that third-party sellers were behind this mess and this gouging, and it wasn't actually Amazon selling these products. Confusion. It still is a lot of confusion in the Australian marketplace, and so that created a lot of negative sentiment, leading up to Christmas and beyond, and into the new year, and even today.
Yeah.
And
in terms of Prime, there's some stuff going on in and around taxation over there. From what I read in the past, there's some problems where
that was another big one that really slammed into Amazon's public relations around July. So at the beginning of our financial year, which is July 1st, prior to that, the Australian government had told online retailers, particularly international online retailers, that if an Australian went to Amazon.com and purchased a product for $10, the Australian government was demanding that Amazon collect the VAT, or the GST as it's called here, the goods and services tax, or the value added tax, which is 10% here. So the Australian government was actually saying to Amazon, any Australian that buys anything from any of your marketplaces, you need to charge 10% GST or the tax, and you need to remit that back to us here in Australia. Yeah. So Amazon actually reacted quite defensively around this and just said, well, we can't do that. So what they did was they put the shutters up. They didn't actually stop Australians from browsing onto Amazon.com or other marketplaces, but what they did do was prevent Australian shoppers from adding anything to the cart. Yeah. Or checking out with any product. So, and they're basically being redirected back to amazon.com.au. That turned into a big public relations kind of war with the Australian government and Amazon on one side, Australian government on the other. And frankly, given that everything else that had been going on, the Australian government actually won, basically won the argument, saying that, we've got another multinational not prepared to pay their fair share of taxes in our country. And so, but Amazon didn't back down either as a government, so we're not allowed. Yeah, I thought
that was a bit random, because I had a customer reach out to me only 3 or 4 days ago to say that we can't buy from Amazon.com. Is there any way that we can deal with you directly? And I said, we're not looking to, at least this year or maybe next year, touching Amazon Australia. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I thought it was a bit weird. I did kind of look into it, but obviously you've covered a bit of ground there. So talk to me about the 10%. Is it remitted a similar way as sales tax? Is it added on the end of the purchase?
No.
Or is it like VAT, where it's included in the sale price?
That's correct. Yeah. All prices are, the price including GST. So if it's a $10 item, it's going to be basically, you'll get $9, and you'll have to remit back $1 or 90 cents back to, or it is actually, sorry, $1. I always get confused, back to the Australian government. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
So that's how it works.
In terms of competition for Amazon in Australia, it's easy to say Amazon just rolls everyone over and tickles their belly and then just moves past them. But hasn't people like eBay got quite a strong presence there?
They have. In fact, eBay has been in Australia and loved by Australians for around about 17 or 18 years, possibly even longer. I can't remember when they first started here, but it was certainly in the late 90s. Yeah, so we've got a lot of third-party sellers on eBay Australia. A lot of the vast majority of Australian consumers have bought something from eBay Australia. We know how it works. We understand how the listings work. We're not confused by the platform, and we're very comfortable shopping there. So to rub salt into Amazon's wound as well, eBay basically did two things. One is that they said that anybody that uses Amazon's fulfillment centers to fulfill eBay orders, I should just actually step back here and say that Amazon actually launched FBA here in Australia to third-party sellers in March, I think, this year, or February.
Yeah.
So it was shortly after that eBay pounced on and said, you're not allowed to use Amazon's fulfillment service to do any fulfillment of any eBay orders. And what was the other thing that I was going to say? Sorry, Danny, I'm just. Oh, that's right. The other thing, of course, was that eBay launched this thing called eBay Plus, which is effectively Amazon Prime, but for eBay. So Australian consumers pay their $49 a year, Australian, and we get free delivery and free returns and a whole bunch of other goodies as well. So eBay jumped on.
I was going to say, before we move off, because this is we can talk more about this later in terms of utilizing as eBay and Amazon as a channel because of making the decision. So I'll save that for a question later. So put that in the memory bank. I'd like to speak to you on part 2 about utilizing the pair of them together to make it feasible, if you like, because you're talking about launching onto the Amazon platform. Is there a way of using like a Joe Lister? But we can get into that later. But let's do some comparisons here. What's Seller Central versus Seller Central, US and AU?
Well, basically, Amazon Australia is currently it's a massively cut down version of the United States Seller Central and indeed anywhere else pretty much. So probably the biggest omission is the fact that there are no sponsored ads. There's no advertising tab.
Wow, that's me out again.
Yeah, straight away. That makes it very difficult, as you'd understand, to really promote your products. It's kind of like going back to Amazon, I suppose, back maybe 2013. I don't even remember when Amazon rolled out sponsored ads on the .com platform. But
was it 2014? I think, in the US.
Yeah, that's right. And look, sellers struggle along without sponsored ads, and obviously here in Australia, that's what they're doing. So we don't have anything like EBC or B2B or early reviewer programs. There's just nothing like that. There is the ability, of course, I wouldn't say of course, but there is the ability to create promotional discount codes, though even that's cut down as well. There's only 3 from memory. There's a percentage off and 2 others that, I can't.
And can you do exclusive codes as well?
Yes, you can. Yeah. So you can do, it's reasonably sort of, the features that they have there. Yeah.
In terms of marketing at this stage, let's look at 2 sides. In terms of marketing, it's about as useful as a chocolate ashtray. Because you've got no early review program. EBC, you can argue all day long because there's no guaranteed proof. We all use EBC. We all say, oh, yeah, let's do EBC. Make it, But if you haven't got the data, the before and after, you've got no categoric proof it actually works for your product. But you read stuff and you go, oh, yeah, it should give you a 10-15% uplift in EBC. But that isn't a guarantee. That's going to be down to your product, the way you've done it, the concept of the EBC, how good the images are, how far the customer's willing to scroll down, what type of customers are, which kind of category in. But no sponsored ads is a big problem. I think I suppose it's different in Australia because I always, when I'm doing speaking engagements and stuff, you get a lot of Amazon sellers come up to you, like the old schoolers who have been on the platform since 2005 and stuff. And I use the analogy of like, well, when you were on the platform, you just floated to the top. When we started, it was the bottom of the Amazon jungle. We created visibility. So when you started, it was magical. You just threw shit on Amazon. You know what I mean? But I don't know how that works because obviously over that period of time, the algorithm would have matured and they would have taken what they've done with that algorithm now and utilized that in Australia. They wouldn't use the 2005 algorithm. Do you see what I mean?
No. The algorithm, as far as I understand, is pretty much identical to, the algorithm in every single marketplace. So the usual things apply, Danny. So you've kind of got, you can do your giveaways. You can run your coupons out to your list, or, run your Facebook ads. Facebook has huge penetration here in Australia, like pretty much everywhere else.
Yeah.
Apart from for China. And yeah, so you can actually, if you know what you're doing, you can easily rank products on Amazon Australia. And the great thing too is that, in a way, sort of double-edged sword here, is that because there aren't that many sales and not a lot of volume going through, you don't have to give away that many to actually rank your product and get to the tree. Yeah.
Well, that's what I was thinking. And in terms of tools, I mean, do you actually need any? Because it's such a small market. Well, no, I suppose you do, because I think it's like Japan, for instance. You know, I've seen so many times where people just want to send their products over there that they've already got. And with Japan, you're either in a velocity category or it's nothing. There's no niche. There's no in between. There's no middle ground. It either sells or it doesn't. You know, there's no market or there is market. And I'm imagining Australia is quite similar to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Australia is not, you know how Leran says, you know, the riches are in the niches, you know.
Yeah.
On Australia, that's not true. The riches are at the top of the category.
Because there's no niches at the moment because it's a developing platform, I suppose, you know.
Well, that's right. In fact, you know, Amazon actually just launched 2 new categories. I mean, that's the other thing I haven't mentioned yet was that, you know, we don't even have all the categories that other marketplaces enjoy. So the 2 new ones that they launched quite recently was pet. And pets and something or other, and then the second one that they've launched is pantry, which is all dried, you know, kind of powders and I don't know, tin food, that sort of stuff. Yeah. So you got to aim for the top.
Exactly. And so, what tools are operational?
Yes. Yeah. So currently, there's pretty much only 3 that I'm aware of. There may be more, but and I'd stand corrected if I'm wrong. But I guess the big one would probably be eGrow, and that's eGrow.io. There's no hyphen or anything there. And that's basically a Jungle Scout, I hate to say it, ripoff. Its numbers are pretty questionable. It seems rather optimistic in terms of the sales volume that I've seen.
Yeah.
The second one is Keeper. I'm pretty sure most of your listeners will know what that is. And then the last one, and Keeper is actually quite useful. You can kind of track, you know, on Keeper, you sort of look at the average, you know, BSR rankings. On Keeper, on a lot of Australian products, you'll actually see the BSR climb up over a day, then it'll drop suddenly as the sale happens, and you can actually see the sales, you know, just by looking at the peaks and troughs of the graph. Which got a few laughs when I presented a topic in Hong Kong a couple of weeks ago. But now the last one, sorry, just is Feedback 5, which is you know, the automated customer email follow-up stuff. Yeah, so
cool.
They're really the big 3.
Sounds good. Right, let's carry on in part 2. But before we go, how can people reach you?
Oh, fantastic! So I can be reached at Chris at Amazon Sales, but it's actually spelled AMAZN Sales, SALES.com. So that's a little consultancy that I've set up here in Australia to help Australian brands set up and scale on Amazon.
And the podcast?
Oh, yeah, that's over at theaustralianseller.com, theaustralianseller.com.
And is that on iTunes, all the podcatchers and stuff like that?
I hope so. Yeah.
Excellent. Cool. Guys, thanks for joining us. We'll see you again in part 2. If this is your first time, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Take care, and I'll see you soon.